Your customer just said they want to stick with gas, and what you say in the next 30 seconds will either make the sale or lose it forever. Look, I've been in this industry for a while, and I can tell you right now that the heat pump versus gas conversation is where most HVAC salespeople completely fall apart. They either turn into pushy environmentalists trying to save the planet, or they just shrug and say, yeah, gas is fine too, and walk away from a better solution. Neither approach serves your customer, and neither one pays your bills. Here's what's really happening out there. Homeowners are confused. They're getting bombarded with information from every direction. Their neighbor got a heat pump and loves it. Their uncle says gas is the only way to go. They read something online about heat pumps not working in cold weather, and then you show up. And they're looking at you to cut through all the noise and give them the truth. But most contractors aren't prepared for this conversation. They don't know how to handle the objections. They don't understand the psychology of what's really going on in that customer's head. Today, I'm going to walk you through the exact conversation that you need to have. Not some script you memorize and sound like a robot, but the real, honest discussion that positions you as the trusted advisor who actually cares about solving their problem. Because that's what this is really about. Solving problems, not pushing products. Let me start with something that might make you uncomfortable. When a homeowner says they want to stick with gas, they're telling you what they're afraid of. Think about it for a second. Nobody wakes up in the morning passionate about combustion technology. They're not emotionally attached to their furnace. What they're really saying is, I'm scared of making the wrong decision. I'm scared of spending more money than I need to. I'm scared this new technology won't work when it's -10 outside and my family's freezing. So your job isn't to argue with them. Your job is to acknowledge those fears and walk them through the reality of their situation. I learned this the hard way. Early in my career, I thought being a good salesperson meant having all the answers and overcoming objections like it was some sort of debate competition. I hit them with facts and figures and efficiency ratings, and you know what happened? They'd nod politely and then go with the contractor who made them feel comfortable. Here's how the conversation should actually go. When they say they want gas, you respond with curiosity, not defensiveness. You say something like, I completely understand why you'd lean towards gas. Can I ask what's most important to you about staying with gas? Now they're going to tell you the real objection, and it's usually one of 5 things. Cost, reliability in cold weather, familiarity, something they've heard on from someone else, or they think heat pumps are this weird environmental product for tree huggers. So let's tackle cost first, because this is the big one. Most homeowners assume gas is cheaper to operate. And depending on where you live, that might actually be true 5 years ago. But the math has changed dramatically. I'm not talking about throwing incentives and rebates at them right away. I'm talking about walking them through their actual utility costs. Pull out your phone, look up the current natural gas rates and electricity rates delivered in your area. Do the calculation right there in front of them, and show them that the efficiency difference between an 80 or 95% efficient furnace and a heat pump with a COP of 3 or 4. Here's the thing though. You can't just throw numbers at people. Numbers don't make decisions. Emotions make decisions, and numbers justify them. So, after you show them the math, you translate it into something real. You say, based on what you're currently spending on gas, you're looking at roughly the same operating cost with a heat pump, maybe 10 or 15% less depending on the winter. But here's what really matters. That gas furnace you're replacing, it's going to need more maintenance. It's going to have parts fail. You're going to need to clean the burners, replace the igniter, maybe deal with a cracked heat exchanger down the road. A heat pump actually has fewer moving parts and no combustion to worry about. Now, let's talk about the cold weather objection, because this is where contractors lose credibility fast. If you tell a homeowner that heat pumps work great in cold weather without any context, and then they go online and see a forum post from someone in Minnesota saying their heat pump sucks, you just became a liar in their mind. You have to get ahead of this. You say, here's the truth about heat pumps in cold weather. The technology has changed massively in the last 5 to 10 years. Modern cold climate heat pumps maintain full capacity down to 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and they keep working at a slightly reduced capacity well below 0. Now, are they as simple as a gas furnace that just burns fuel? No, they're more sophisticated. But that sophistication gives you something gas can't: efficiency. A gas furnace is maybe 95 efficient on its best day. A heat pump is 300% efficient because it's moving heat, not creating it. But here's where you really need to be honest. If you're in northern Maine or Minnesota or Montana, you need to have a conversation about supplemental heat. Some homes are going to need a properly sized heat pump with electric resistance backup. And some homes are perfectly fine with just a heat pump if it's sized right. You can't cookie cutter this. And your customer can smell it when you're just trying to sell them whatever makes you the most money. I remember doing an estimate for a family outside of Boston a while back. The husband was a mechanical engineer. He'd done his research, he knew the BTU calcs, he knew the efficiency ratings, and he was convinced gas was the answer. So instead of arguing with him, I asked him to walk me through his logic. Turns out his whole reasoning was based on a heat pump his parents had installed in the 90s that was basically a glorified air conditioner run backwards. It was loud, it iced up constantly, it couldn't keep the house warm below 35 degrees. Once I understood that this was his frame of reference, I could address the real issue. His experience with old technology was creating a bias against new technology. I showed him the spec sheets for modern inverter-driven compressors. I explained how variable speed technology completely changed the game. I offered to take him to see a heat pump install we'd done a month before so he could hear how quiet they are and talk to the homeowner about their experience. He ended up going with the heat pump, not because I pressured him, but because I took the time to understand where he was coming from and gave him new information that updated his outdated belief. Now let's talk about the familiarity objection. This one's sneaky because customers don't always say it out loud, but you can see it in their body language. They're comfortable with gas because it's all what they always had, and their dad had gas, their grandfather had gas, it's familiar. And humans are wired to prefer the familiar over the unknown, even when the unknown is better. Your job is to reframe this. You say, I get it. You know how gas works. You trust it. But let me ask you something. When you bought your last car, did you get the one with fuel injection or a carburetor? They're gonna look at you confused because nobody used carburetors in decades. You're gonna say, exactly, technology moves forward. And just like fuel injection made cars more efficient and reliable, heat pump technology has evolved to a point where it's simply better for most applications. The social proof objection is another big one. Their neighbor or brother-in-law or guy at work told them something negative about heat pumps or positive about gas. You can't dismiss this. If you say, well, your neighbor doesn't know what they're talking about, you just insulted someone that they trust. Instead, you dig into it. You ask, what did they say specifically? What kind of heat pump did they get? When was it installed? Oh, what were the issues? Most of the time, you're gonna find out that the system was undersized, or it was an older model, or it wasn't installed properly. And now you can say, yeah, that makes sense. If the system wasn't sized correctly, they probably had problems. That's exactly why we do a full heat loss calculation before recommending anything. I'm not interested in selling you a system that doesn't work for your house. And here's the environmental angle. And you need to be careful with this one. Some customers care deeply about their carbon footprint. Others don't give a damn and will actually get annoyed if you try to make them feel guilty about it. You need to read the room. If they bring up environmental concerns, great, lean into it. Talk about how heat pumps reduce emissions, how they work with renewable energy, how they're the future of home heating, right? But if they don't bring it up, don't make it the centerpiece of your pitch. Lead with comfort, reliability, and cost. The environmental benefits are a bonus, not the main selling point. Now, here's something most contractors completely miss. The real power in this conversation isn't in convincing someone that heat pumps are better. It's in helping them understand what better means for their specific situation. You need to ask questions. What are they unhappy with about their current system? Is their house heating evenly? Are there rooms that are too hot or too cold? Are they worried about maintenance costs? Do they plan to stay in the house long term, or are they going to sell in a few years? How do they use their air conditioning in the summertime? Because here's the thing, a heat pump isn't just a heating solution, it's a heating and cooling solution. If they're running window units in the summer, or they have an old central AC that's on its last legs, now you're replacing two systems with just the one. That changes the value proposition completely. But you only uncover this if you ask questions instead of just launching into your sales pitch. Let me give you a real example. I met with a couple one spring. They called us because their furnace was 25 years old and they knew it needed to be replaced. They assumed that they were going to get another gas furnace. Standard job, right? But I asked them about cooling. It turns out that they had this ancient AC that was so loud they couldn't sleep with their bedroom window open in the summertime. They'd been talking about replacing it, but kept putting it off because of the cost. When I showed them that they could solve both problems with one heat pump system, and the total cost was less than replacing the furnace and AC separately, it became a no-brainer. But I never would have known about the AC issue if I didn't ask. Here's another thing. You need to address the elephant in the room about installation quality. A lot of heat pump horror stories you hear are because of bad installations, undersized systems, improperly charged refrigerant lines, ducts that were never designed for airflow requirements of a heat pump, maybe poor thermostat programming. If you're honest about this, it actually builds trust. You say, look, heat pumps are more sensitive to installation quality than gas furnaces. If someone just swaps your furnace for a heat pump and doesn't evaluate your ductwork or do proper commissioning, you're gonna have problems. That's why we do a full system evaluation before we quote anything. I'd rather tell you up front that your ductwork needs modifications than have you call me 6 months later because your heat pump isn't performing. Of course, the pricing conversation is critical too. Don't hide from the fact that heat pumps actually cost more upfront than a basic gas furnace. Just address it directly. You say, yeah, the initial investment's higher, sometimes 30 to 40% more than a standard gas furnace. But you're getting a heating and cooling system, not just heat. And when you factor in the operating savings, the reduced maintenance, and the available rebates and incentives, the payback period is usually somewhere between 5 and 8 years. After that, you're just saving money every month. Now, if you're planning to sell the house next year, maybe that doesn't make sense for you. But if you're staying here long term, it's actually the smarter financial decision. And speaking of rebates, you better know what's available in your area. Federal tax credits, state incentives, utility rebates, low interest financing programs. These can reduce the upfront costs significantly, but don't lead with them. Don't make it sound like the only reason to get a heat pump is because the government is subsidizing it. That makes it seem like it's not a good product on its own merits. The incentives are the cherry on top, not the whole sundae. All right, here's what it all comes down to. This conversation isn't about heat pumps versus gas. It's about understanding your customer's situation, addressing their concerns honestly, and helping them make the best decision for their home and their family. Some customers are going to be perfect for heat pumps. Others might genuinely be better off with gas, especially if they have high electricity rates and low gas rates, or if they're in an extremely cold climate without good cold climate heat pump options. And that's okay. Your job isn't to sell heat pumps to everyone, I don't believe. Your job is to be the trusted advisor who gives them accurate information and helps them navigate this huge decision, right? Because when you do that, even if they choose gas today, they're gonna remember you as the contractor who didn't push a product. They're gonna call you for the next job. They're gonna refer you to their friends. And that's worth more than any single sale. So, the next time a customer says they wanna stick with gas, don't panic. Don't argue, just take a breath, ask them why, and have the honest conversation. You might be surprised how often that conversation ends with them choosing the heat pump after all. Thanks for joining me this week at HVAC Pro Blog. We provide advice for residential system design, quality installation, and system diagnosis. I'll see you soon.